Trigger warning. This podcast is about grief. Whether you are newly bereaved or whether you have been stuck in grief for years, I do hope this podcast brings you some comfort. Grief is such a universal experience, but we all do it differently. This podcast is not about fixing you or forcing the healing process, because there is no cure for grief. It can only be absorbed, experienced, loved and cared for. So whether you are doing it privately behind closed doors, or like me, you are kicking and screaming your way through, let's support each other. This is a safe space where we can come together and share experiences. My hope is that this podcast shines a light on your path and gives you the strength to navigate your way through the grieving process. My name is Louise Bates, and I'm so pleased we connected. I'm looking forward to interviewing people who have also walked this path to find out what worked for them, in the hope that it helps you too. I'm sending you so much love and support, and I look forward to sharing this crazy journey with you. Hello and welcome to this episode of A Gift for Grief. And today I am very excited and slightly scared to welcome Grant Harris.
I'm not that ugly, am I?
Who happens to be a medium. So welcome, Grant.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for fitting this recording in, because I know you are very busy on tour at the moment, and I've got tickets for your show tonight in Rugby, which I'm extra excited about because my hubby Bill, who sits very quietly in the background recording these podcasts, is also going, and he's never been to anything like this before. So,
awesome.
Very excited. So I'm really grateful that you've made the time to do this today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Well, I'm going to get straight into it because I've got a lot of questions. Okay, you ready?
I think so.
Well, I need to start with, how and when did you discover that you were a medium?
So for my discovering, I guess the ability, first experience I had was when my nephew passed away. I started having visitations from him, which were it passed in 2006, in December, so it was the following year. I started having visitations from him, kept seeing him, forming in my bedroom, and visitations just kept happening. Didn't really understand what it was at the time. Didn't really have much of a, I guess, knowledge on spirits, mediumship, things like that. But it persisted, and I kept seeing that vision. I kept getting that visitation to what I know it is now. And actually discovering the mediumship side of things, well, when I joined a development class as a result of me going to a spiritualist church and seeing a medium that gave me a reading that told me what I was seeing, why I was seeing it, told me I'd got the ability, told me to go to a development class, which I guess there must have been some inquisitiveness from that point on for me to go. So I went to the development class, and at the time it was a bit like learning to run before a walk, I think, looking back now, because the tutor at time, Jean, who became a tutor for a lot of years, put me on a rostrum in a spiritualist church and just said, tell me what comes to your head, and tell me who you feel drawn to. So I did, and I got this, I think it was a lady's birthday, and started getting this information, but no clue, no idea where it was coming from, didn't know what were really happening. Intrigued though, it intrigued me to continue going, and just developed from there really. And I suppose it was at that point when actually being able to realise that I could work with it, speak to spirit and convey messages from them, what at time that I guess I discovered my abilities. Prior to that, I sensed a lot, kept getting them visitations from my nephew, which I do believe now works with me as one of my guides, and helps me in my work.
Well, that's fascinating. But when you first started getting those visions in your bedroom, did you find it frightening?
No.
Not at all?
And I think reason I didn't find it scary is because it were a familiar person to me, somebody that I knew.
Yeah.
Maybe had it been a stranger like some people experience, I probably would have been scared of that, but I didn't find it scary at time.
So do you think mediumship is something that chooses you, or is it something that we can all do?
I don't think everybody is necessarily born a medium. I think it's something that we all have an ability to maybe sense our loved ones, or to sense spirit. I think we all have that ability on different levels. Some people sense it stronger than others. The mediumship side of it, I think, is something that takes a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of dedication to I guess master that, the art of it really, because sensing loved ones and sensing spirit, I think, is something we have ability, but actually to convey them signs, symbols, feelings into a reading, I think is what takes time. And I guess we have the ability, but it's how much time people can commit into putting into that.
Yeah. And it's a very sensitive thing to do. You need to be able to convey the messages you get in a tactful way as well, don't you, I imagine?
Yeah, absolutely. And learning to understand of it years, you see symbols, don't actually know what they mean. So then you're constantly receiving new symbols, new signs, new feelings. We all has different senses that we work with to convey that into a message. And it's learning them really.
Yeah.
That takes time and to perfect them.
Yeah. But how do people react when you tell them what you do? So say, for example, you've got to fill out some legal form and it asks for your profession and you write medium. Do you get the second glance?
I've got to be honest with you, I tend to tell fibs a lot with work and when I get asked that question. So if people ask me in the street or on nights out, I'll tell them that I work at Tesco's. Things like that. If I'm filling forms in, I'll tend to just put down that I'm a director of a company, which I am. That's not...
so you're not telling fibs.
Not telling
truth,
fibs, but as for actual disclosing that I'm a medium, if I can hold it back or can not declare it, I tend to do that.
People probably want you to give them a message. Say, "Oh, can you get my Auntie Ethel?" or something. And
I love what I do, and I put a hell of a lot of time into my work, and we do a lot of events every year. So sometimes it's just nice to have that downtime away from work, I guess.
Yeah. Well, mediumship can be a controversial topic because some people are very sceptical about it.
Yeah.
And others find comfort in receiving messages from their loved ones. What would you like to say to people who view mediumship as exploitation, especially for people who are grieving?
Obviously I don't view it as exploitation. It's a service that we're providing. And I think if we look at that as exploitation, we could look at a lot of other businesses that make money from death, if we put it that way.
Yeah.
Florists, funeral directors. For me, it's if somebody's bringing somebody comfort, and it's bringing somebody peace from losing somebody. I don't think that's exploiting a person. I think it's an helpful service that people do get a lot from if they are lucky enough to get that connection that they need at that moment in time. Then I don't see it as exploiting from my point of view.
No, and you've trained and you've spent a lot of energy and building this up.
And I'm always very mindful as well that I feel very lucky to have this ability and to have this gift, and I always try and do good where I can from. I do make a wage out of it, and my team that work with me, we do make a wage out of it. But at the same time, we've made a lot of money for various charities, and we've donated a lot of. I think last year, £7,000 worth of tickets that we'd given away to various raffles that people were run to help their causes. So as much as we do benefit from it, we also do a lot of good in way of helping other causes as well where we can.
Absolutely. But how can we differentiate between genuine mediumship and potential scams or, say, fake mediums?
For me, from my point of view, if I were going for a reading, I could only, I guess, speak for what I would look for. If it's a mediumship reading, because there's many different type of readings that people can have. You know, there's tarot readings, there's oracle card readings, there's intuitive readings. From a mediumistic reading point of view, so looking for a connection with spirit and someone's loved one, the validation that they're bringing forward in that reading, so and evidence is what I would always look for. So if you're going to see a medium, you're just getting very generic statements coming through, where there's no evidence. So what I mean by generic statements is, I have a lady that's really close to you, that's drawing in, things like that. If a medium, I believe, has a true connection with a spirit, they should be able to bring evidence and validation forward within that reading. So the essence of the person, personality, how that person was, maybe something, a description of where they look if they can see them, if that medium has that ability to do that, names, dates, just unique information that is relevant to that person that is coming through is what I would look for.
Yeah.
If you don't get that in a reading, and you're not getting that in a reading, that's what, for me, that would be an alarm bell.
The fact that you built up your following by word of mouth and now fill venues across the country just shows you are the real deal.
Yeah, we are really lucky, and I'm really lucky to have the team that I have that work with me as well. We work really hard in every aspect to ensure that when people come to the events, that they have a nice experience as well. And we have a lot of returning customers that just like to listen as well, into evenings, and which is really nice to hear.
Yeah.
But I feel very fortunate to have response that we have from it.
Fab. Can you explain the difference to me between a clairvoyant, a medium, or a psychic medium?
So, clairvoyant medium would be a connection with someone that's passed over, a spirit, as I would refer to. Psychic reading is more, as you're working with different energies, so you tend to be that you would be channeling the energy from that person. So, reading would probably more, whereas a mediumistic reading would be about somebody that's passed over. A psychic reading would probably be more about maybe what is happening around that person's life at this moment in time. Sometimes a guidance reading. Also, future predictions can come into a psychic reading, as well. And then what were the other one that you mentioned?
Got clairvoyant, medium, or psychic medium.
Yeah. So medium is that bridge between the living and the spirit side of life. The psychic is more what's happening around at this time, and sometimes predictions and guidance. But some psychic readers will often use cards, tarot. I guess in years ago it were like tea leaf readings and things where they would see things in. So that sometimes they will use tools as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating, really fascinating. Now, on your website, you explain that spirits talk to you through different ways. They can show you visions, you smell things, you feel the pain or the emotion. And this is how spirits communicate with you. Is this something you can turn on and off? Did you need to learn how to control this?
Yeah, in early days. And I'm very lucky with development and awareness classes I went through. Were very structured and very regimented. And I don't want to use the word tough for him, but just very, very lucky with training that I had that learned us how to do that very early on. It comes very easy to me now to be able to turn it on and off. And I think part of it for me, because I obviously have to focus on it as well. It's almost like I'm looking for that connection there as well. So when I'm not working, I tend to not be affected by it, and I do find it quite easy to turn on and off from making that connection. Sometimes when I'm driving to an event, if I'm on my own, which is very, very rare now, I have things come to me. People start speaking to me sometimes. On the way home, not so much. I think it's just the eagerness sometimes of them spirits wanting to talk to their loved ones, because sometimes they can just be as excited to come through to talk to them as that recipient is to talk to them.
So it's not like you're going to be stood in the queue at Sainsbury's or on a night out with your mates. You're going to be constantly like, leave me alone.
I think it does happen very, very occasionally. I think for last night out that it happened on just before Christmas. And I would never, ever usually go up to somebody and just start telling them something. That's really a barrier for me.
Yeah.
I was queuing to go in a nightclub. There were a girl stood on her own, and I could see an Anna stood next to her. And I actually went across to her and I said, "Can I speak to you?" I explained what I did, and so I've got this lady called Rose. She went, "It's me Nanan." I think I know.
Oh, that's amazing.
But she took it in good. She took it in good faith, and if it ever happens again, or it were to happen again, I would always hope that them people in spirit would know enough about their loved one to know that they'd be happy to receive that, for them to come through and to get that message to them at that time. But that is very, very rare that happens.
But do you find talking to spirit drains your energy? I mean, how do you feel after a show?
There is like an adrenaline rush. There is that feeling. It is tiring at times, but obviously I think because we work across nearly all of the UK, the travelling, just anybody driving to work, it would be tiring for them. So there's that element to it. It does tire me, but there's also that rush and adrenaline that you get when you've left. And I'd imagine that's same for anybody that's on a stage. When you've had a good night and you get lovely feedback, lovely comments that you've helped people, that does give you a sense of peace. But tiring a little bit. I don't find it too draining. I just think probably travelling is all part of that, really.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, as you know, this podcast is about supporting people who are going through a bereavement. Can you explain how mediumship can help people going through the grieving process?
From experiences that I've come across in my lifetime, the ways that I think it probably helps people the most is knowing that when they've had that validation connection to their loved ones, that death isn't the end of the road. I think comfort in knowing that they are close to them, and when they have the validations that they bring evidence forward of things that maybe they've done or things that they've been doing, that then can prove that spirit person has been around them, watching over them, looking after them. If they've brought some validation through about what they've done that day, maybe it confirms to them that they are there and they are close to them. So I think that is a form of comfort that it brings to them, and I hope that it brings that comfort to people. A form of closure as well, I think, in some ways. I had a lady, it always sticks in my mind, going back about 3 years ago, working in Worksop at a cricket club, and I'd given a reading to a lady from her husband, and he'd been passed over for over 20 years. She'd spent a lot of time, a lot of money going to see mediums, and she'd come to me for to watch one of our events. I think it was the second time I come in. She got her husband come through, and she said to me, after 20 odd years of searching, I feel like you've given me closure to move forward in my life. And that is what it's about for me. And that in ways like that, that's what I think it helps.
So are you aware of any scientific studies or evidence supporting the effectiveness of mediumship, especially in aiding the grieving process?
Not scientific studies, and it's not something I've looked into myself, if I'm being honest. But just from personal feedback that I've had from my audiences and customers over years, that it's helped them. I am in that way, but not scientifically, and I tend to stay away from all that side of things.
And it's a bit similar. I practice Reiki, and I know, my clients will say how they felt and what they've experienced and what I felt and I've experienced. And that is enough. I don't need a scientific paper or evidence. And if there's people out there that, will poo-poo it, then I just let that happen.
We're
all different, aren't we?
We are. And one of the things I always what people bear in mind is when they are doing that, or they are pulling it down for whatever reason. I mean, I don't push my beliefs onto anybody,
No.
and I do find it quite frustrating when I don't mind skeptics, I don't mind people that don't believe, etc. One thing I do that does get me back up is when the skeptics try to push their beliefs that they don't believe onto the people that do, and I just think, why would you take somebody's comfort away from them?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
In
Yeah.
what they believe in, what they're getting comfort from. Why would you feel the need to mock that and to take that?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
and same with any industry in this healing. That why would they take that away from that person if they're genuinely getting something from that, and some, whether it's comfort, closure, peace, relaxation.
Okay. So when people go to see a medium, they may have an idea about what messages they would like to receive. And often the messages they get can be something completely different.
Yeah.
Is this something you find?
Yeah. I think I tend to have a saying that you'll hopefully get what you need to hear at that time as opposed to what you want to hear at that time. And I think obviously there's people that are coming forward will be aware that there's, especially in an audience setting, or in a reading setting, there is a time limit in essence on that time that you're going to have speaking to that person. So I think it's just in the hopes that they will bring what they need at that time.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And some people talk about receiving signs from their loved ones, and I do love a sign. Who doesn't love a sign? But do you think everybody has the ability to notice the signs?
Yeah, I think sometimes we maybe, and myself included, when we think about signs, question, well, why can't we just see them in physical sense? Like, I can see you, you can see me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people expect to see that. And it doesn't always happen in that way. Sometimes, I do development and awareness classes myself now, and one of the things I speak about a lot is to go to the memory of the feeling that you had when you were in that person's company. And we always, if we think about our, for me, grandparents and friends that I've lost, when I think about that person, there's a memory that in the way that I feel, and I think we have that ability. And sometimes it's just that feeling that can come to us that can be a sign. So I think we all have the ability. It's just, again, on different levels as to how strong we are able to pick up on that sense.
Yeah, I like that. Well, in terms of signs, I've had all manner of things, but I am mindful that there may be someone listening who just doesn't get any signs or pick up on anything, and they may be desperate to get something. And it doesn't mean that their loved ones love them any less. But what would you say to that person listening who doesn't feel or get any signs?
Don't ever take it as a sign that they are not there because they don't pick up on that. I think there is probably is an element of our loved ones know us better than anyone, and if they foresee that sign is going to be too much for us to deal with at that certain time, then they maybe choose not to bring that forward as well. It doesn't mean that they're not there. Never lose hope. Always speaks to us loved ones, and sometimes meditations can just help us relax, to connect, and maybe sense a little bit stronger. But main thing is not to lose hope in the knowing that they are and thinking that they're not there, because we don't ever see them signs, or we don't get them, because it is a difficult thing when people don't sense and don't receive them signs. But it doesn't mean it's never going to happen either.
Yeah.
I know people that have waited years and years. I waited a long time to have a sign from my friend, and one day it just happened.
Yeah.
It's
And sometimes they're very subtle, aren't they?
Yeah.
And we might miss them.
That's it, and it goes to it goes back to that, the expectation of what that sign is going to be as well.
Yeah.
Some people see it in way of feathers, robins, and feelings. I get a lot of smells as my signs, and which I believe is a sign of a loved one, and it's one of the senses that they can use. It can just be something as simple as that, and sometimes it can just be a memory that's being provoked in our our hearts and minds, that
Yes.
is also another sign that somebody's loving us put that one there. So it comes in many different forms, and as you say, they can be so subtle.
Yeah.
But I would always say, if it's been years and it's never happened, it doesn't mean that it's never going to. There's always that chance it is going to come through, and you will experience that sign. So never lose hope.
Yeah. So if people want to have a personal reading with you, or they're interested in coming to your show, how can they get in touch with you?
So I don't currently do one-to-one readings at the minute, just for volume at events that we are doing. Never say never, hopefully, and it's where I started off doing one-to-one readings. I will go back to them at some point in the future. To come to one of our events, you can get tickets from my website or through Ticket Source. Website is grandterracemedium.com.
Yeah.
And Ticket Source is ticketsource/mediumship nights, I think. But it is linked through my website as well.
Well, I will put your website in the show notes so people can check it out and get in touch with you through that. So, Grant, you've experienced your own personal grief through losing your nephew and a friend and possibly other people. As a medium, how does grief affect you?
I think there's an element just that is same as everybody else's. As grief, I guess the knowing that life does continue on, or that spirit continues on, does help me. But the passing, there's still a process of grief that I've gone through with friends and family. Does give me peace. It does give me comfort knowing I can honestly say I don't think it necessarily softens that blow for me when it has happened in past. I do believe it's helped me move on in that process, but that initial time, it does affect me just as it would anybody that wasn't a medium. If I'm being honest,
you're still a human being, aren't you?
Yeah, and I
you've
think
got
grief.
emotions and
I think grief. It's so many different ways, and it can. Does it ever? I don't think it ever leaves.
No.
Never leaves people, and my. One of my nanas has been passed 14 years this year. Birthday, a couple of week anniversaries like that still gets me, same as it does. Does anybody else, and you still have them moments, because I'm fully aware, even though I do what I do, I know that physical connection to be able to sit in a room with somebody is not there. And as mediums, I think sometimes people think, you can just sit and speak to them, speak to your loved ones, and I can talk to them. It doesn't always mean I get that validation and that connection back from them.
I can understand that, because with my son Matthew, my spiritual mind tells me and reassures me that he's at peace and he's absolutely fine. But as a mom and a human being, I miss that daily contact, the smell, the sounds, the laughs.
Absolutely.
So it's like an inner conflict almost. It's like, but he's fine. But I miss him. And it's that, as humans, we need that physical connection, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you understand why there is so much awkwardness and clumsiness around grief, and why, as a society, we don't like talking about it?
Yeah, I think it's. I think there's an element of people not knowing what to say and then scared of saying the wrong thing.
Yes.
And I mean, I spoke to a lady who'd she'd lost her son, and she said that people avoided her. My friend lost her partner. She said people avoid her, and I don't think for 1 second it's done in any malice intent. I think people, it's the awkwardness in knowing what to say to them. And the thing I do find, and the thing from speaking to different people, there were people just talk about them and actually broach that subject. I mean, obviously yourself firsthand has gone through that experience. I think it's just a case of people not knowing what to say as to the awkwardness around it, and people don't speak. And I think for me, and I'm big on it, I have therapy once a week. talking every aspect. 'Cause I think, we have grief with losing people as well, but
Yeah.
I think it can come in many different forms of life, friendships, relationships,
Yes.
grief. It covers a massive board of things. But an experience, I'd just tell this very quickly. After my mum's mum had passed away, we were at New Year, we were at my sister's property, and having a bit of New Year. Now, New Year were a big thing for me, and all the family used to be at her house for us, so a lot of memories associated with that being sparked, and I think it was that year or the year after she'd passed away. And I remember my auntie being sat on the sofa next to her husband, visibly upset, and I knew why she were upset. I stood outside looking up at sky. I were upset. People in the back garden upset. We're all upset for the same reason. Not one of us spoke about that, and it's a memory I always go back to with that, because it's people know people are not speaking, and I think sometimes surprising what you can get from just having them conversations. And
Yeah, like you say, I think people avoid the situation or avoid talking because they don't want to say the wrong thing.
yeah,
It's easier sometimes not to go there, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. But, as a medium, you talk to grieving people as part of your job.
Yeah.
What advice would you give about passing on condolences?
I think we're probably a little bit conditioned. When you told me about your son, and first thing I said, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
And he said that is a natural response to do that. When I'm speaking to people, they're talking to me and telling me about their loved ones. One of the things that always sticks in my mind, and I do say quite a lot, is I'm not going to try and understand what you're feeling, because I think grief is individual to every single person, and I would never want to undermine that person by saying, I understand what you're going through, because you don't. If you have two parents that have lost a son each, and there'll be things that each of you will be able to associate with and way of feelings, but it's personal to everyone. So I never try and say I can understand where you're coming from with people, and keep it unique. But I would also encourage them to speak about their loved ones as well, and their grief and their experience and what they're going through. I always encourage that.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And even if you feel people feel uncomfortable and don't know what to say, just say something.
Yeah.
It's better than not saying anything at all, isn't it?
Yeah, and never avoid people because out of fear of saying the wrong thing, because that person that is going through grief will understand that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what words of wisdom could you share with someone who is maybe stuck in grief?
Be kind to yourself, speak, and baby steps in any aspect of grief in life, where we can try and do things that make us feel better, that make us feel nicer. I am, me personally, my personal experience, speaking, a massive thing. And sometimes when you speak about the grief, I found you feel rubbish after doing that. You've opened up a little pocket of his emotions, but you always once you find done that, shortly down the line you start to feel better after doing it. So my advice would be to take little steps, and but also be kind to yourself as well, because we're very quick sometimes to be angry for the way that we feel, and think, is it natural, is it normal that we're feeling this way, and what is normal?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, be kind with yourself. Good advice. Well, I hope this episode helps to loosen people's grief. We're not here to convert anyone who doesn't believe.
No.
You can listen to this episode and still have a choice to what you believe. But I personally find these conversations very comforting. And if it comforts me, I know it will comfort others too, won't it?
I hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that.
So do you believe that grief has the potential to bring unexpected positive insights into people's lives.
Yeah, I think people can often find out more and explore more about themselves, their emotions. I think it can bring people closer together.
Yeah.
As well in where connections with family and friends. I think it can bring people together, and I think there are a lot of positives that can be taken from it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is about finding them. But yeah, I think the main thing would be bringing people together.
Yeah. I agree. Now, Grant, being a medium, you obviously believe in an afterlife.
Yeah.
What does the afterlife look like to Grant Harris?
I have a saying that it can be whatever you want it to be in way of our vision, and I think there's an element of that I believe to be true. But I don't believe that we are on a cloud floating about somewhere. I believe afterlife is here and around us and around our family and being around us. So I think it's here still. I think it's on Earth, and I just think it's Earth without all the stresses of life and worries and financial concerns and anything that bothers us, health concerns, stuff like that. A bit like paradise, I guess, on Earth.
Yeah, oh, I like the sound of that. It's nothing to be afraid of, is it?
No, absolutely not.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to end our podcast today. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you for the work that you do, bringing so much comfort to people. And maybe we have converted some people through this episode, but whether people choose to believe in mediumship or not, it is undeniable that it offers a unique perspective on how we can navigate the grief journey and find healing in different ways. Anything that brings us comfort is a good thing. So thank you, Grant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of A Gift for Grief. Please feel free to share it with your friends and family, and let's encourage others to become more grief literate. If you're struggling with your grief or worried about your mental health, please do speak to your doctor. For more information about my story and my 2 books about grief, visit my website www.louisebates.co.uk. The music on this podcast was written and recorded by Matthew Bates and can be found on his 2 albums, Fight Back and Kaleidoscope.